Thanks very much for all joining up. You're all in the right place for a great webinar ahead of us. I can see a few more people are joining up, but we have a couple of introductions. Today we'll be looking at crowding in. Is crowding in mission impossible? Which is the second in a series of 2 webinars that have been looking at facilitating change in fin markets. So today, we're going to very briefly start by recapping on the first webinar, engaging with the private sector in fin markets, then asking why we're still here for the second one, a bit philosophical there. Then we'll focus in on the strategies our speakers, our programs are using for crowding in other businesses, followed by the strategies for working with other market actors. Then we'll come back to the key question, is it mission impossible, followed by questions and answers. So we have some great speakers on the line. Philipp and Sven were both with us for the last webinar, but our impact substitute today is Netsaalem. You can see information about their program there, but Netsaalem works for the PRIME program, which is the Pastoralist Area Resilience Improvement through Market Expansion, which is a 5 years USAID-funded program in Ethiopia. ÉLAN RDC is a 5-year market systems development program funded by BIFID and implemented by Adam Smith International, which is working in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And Sven Gehlhaar is working for Rural Markets, which is an SDC-funded rural development project with a strong market systems development approach being implemented in Bolivia by Swiss Contact Foundation as consortium leader. If we can't get through any of your questions here, these guys I know are really up for you sending them any questions. That's why you have their email addresses there. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. In the last webinar, which I think some of you did attend, but for those who perhaps weren't there, we started off by looking at some of the definitions that different people had for fin markets. But then we moved on a bit into the biggest challenges. And what was interesting for me is that those challenges were not necessarily so different to those in less dysfunctional markets, but it was the intensity of those challenges that struck a bit more. And then we particularly talked about expectations for direct delivery, mistrust between market actors and outsiders in some cases, and also failures or very weak financial markets. We then focused in on some of the approaches that programs had. We looked at in finances through cost shares, linkages, and other work to build up the financial ecosystem, managing expectations through quick wins, and it's quite interesting to see from Sven highlighting the bigger role for the government and how rural markets was working with the government there. And in the river transport sector, we looked at the use of ICTs and also forward contracts to deal with managed trust issues. And what we really saw, I think, was some really great partnerships to encourage businesses to take up new, more inclusive business models. But I think we're here today because we recognize that in order to reach scale and change systems, we need to see crowding in, whether or not that's other businesses adopting these business models or other market actors or the regulations changing to embed these changes. We need to see this crowding in. But it's harder in some ways in fin markets. Information barriers the lack of information flows between remote areas, bigger market failures can mean that successes in one area are not necessarily known about others, which can mean that the market doesn't necessarily, or other businesses don't necessarily pick up new business models. If there's very few firms, should we be investing in that first firm again? Creating new partners even, or looking at other market players. So these are some of the questions we're going to be talking about today. But before I go further on that, I want to we have a poll that I think my assistant at SEEP is going to bring up. We have a couple questions just to get you guys going. So you can see the first question is, do you work in fin markets? Yes or no? And then I've had some more funny one. Well, serious though. Is crowding in fin markets? A, mission, if I encourage 1 or 2 businesses to act in a more pro-poor way, that's a miracle. B, mission, we need to be much more realistic about what we expect in fin markets. C, it's mission possible, but if we don't go into areas that are too remote, D, mission possible, but we need to work with a lot more players. E, mission possible, but we have to increase the support we offer. Or mission F, what's all this whining about? So looking at that, I can see not everyone has responded, but of those who have, most of you are working in markets. So the stuff we're talking about is going to be very relevant for most of you here. And crowding in thin markets mission impossible. I think the most common answer we have is we need to be much more realistic about what we expect in thin markets. So definitely, I think that view of realism is something we'll be coming to here. But we also have a couple other responses. Two people have said mission possible. We have to increase the support we have on offer. But it's interesting that all those questions there have got some support. But if our presenters can think about it, it's definitely the people listening think a degree of realism about what's possible is needed, but perhaps you'll show them that they can reach for more. So we're going to leave the poll now, and we're going to move on. The first question I have for our speakers is, what strategies are you using for crowding in other businesses? And I'll pass over to Philippe first of all. Philippe?
Thanks a lot, Ashley, for the introduction. I'd like to structure the answer to this question, strategies for crowding in, around two approaches. So now on the slide you see crowding in Bazankuzu. Bazankuzu is our project location. You see it on the map there in the upper center. And from there, agricultural products are transported by boat to Kinshasa. In this pilot project, we provided some capacity building and also some material support, that is contribution to warehouse building costs and to some quality measurement tools, to support what is our central business model, aggregation and transport contract in advance. So traders, for those of you who were not at the first webinar, traders buy goods from farmers and transport them by boat to Kinshasa. And the theory is, if the boat knows that there's something to transport, it can come, and if the trader knows that the boat will come, then the trader will buy more agricultural products. So it worked pretty well. A boat left in February 2015 with 450 tons of maize instead of 100 as the year before. And both the 11 traders and the transporter saved around 20% because mainly because of gain in efficiency. So faster boat travel, less fuel consumption, shorter loading times. So the Bazankuzu traders are pretty happy, and they now finance a focal point who organizes this aggregation. And this person also has a bureau, and there are 2 decentralized warehouses which are also managed by the traders. We expect more traders to join and higher amounts of goods transported this season. So, but how does this work elsewhere? Well, again, at the map, you see there are a lot of other of these port places where agricultural products are aggregated, and we expanded to Buzinga, Akula, and Bumba in the second season. Here, we provide less support, so we need to work with building on existing structures, like cooperative structures who are already in place, warehouses which are already there, traders associations who are already there. And that means we need to adapt the model. Yes, aggregation and transport contracts, but instead of traders, it can be farmers' unions. So in Bazankuzu, which is the Buzinga port, there we have very strong farmer unions. And they are interested to sell directly to industrial consumers. Crops concerned are maize, palm oil, and groundnut, mainly. Next slide. So how did we go from Bazankuzu to other places? We focused on the central element of the central business model, which is contracts in advance, because this is important in all places. And as Bazankuzu is so remote, we couldn't bring the people to explain to others, so we produced a movie. And this was with actors and testimony of the people who were part of the pilot. And together with this movie, we presented a proposal adapted to the particular situation in other places. So Akula and Buzinga, which are the ports of Gemena, a center of agricultural production, turned out to have largest chances for replication. And here now a focal point installed. And we also have, for the beginning, one permanent local staff there to follow up. We hope from there we'll be able to facilitate 2 or 3 boats bringing agricultural products to Kinshasa this season. So this is 1,500 tons. Thank you. Netsaalem, I think you're next.
Thank you, Philip. Yeah, I'll try to address this question based on the experience that we have in Ethiopia, particularly in pastoralist area, which it's like a tin market. So in Prime Project, we employ multiple strategies to facilitate crowding in such markets. So among these strategies, I'll try to explain these 4 key strategies which have actually brought us an impact in encouraging crowding in a tin market. So we use expanded use of cost share subsidies to stimulate demand through organizing trade fairs, so market actors can actually conduct actual market research and later on decide to expand or create a new business in those areas, or others will also follow in that. We also facilitate access to finance, as access to finance is one of the key things in expanding businesses or facilitating this crowding. We also have a competitive cost share grants, big and small, for businesses, and we emphasize on linkage. So relationship also matters in facilitating crowding in a tin market. So just to give you examples that we have done in facilitating crowding in a tin market is we give a cost share grant for businesses, like small businesses and large businesses. The amount of grant might range from $10,000 up to $1.5 million based on the capacity of the business. So when we do this thing, we can buy down the risk for these business actors to come and invest in those tin area where there is poor infrastructure, or sometimes it might be remote. So we will buy down the risk by cost sharing part of their investment. And we have done a lot of these small grants and also big investments in pastoralist area. And once we have done, and once this business expand in this area, so then we are seeing more crowding in when people start, other new actors starting operating in those areas, expanding in those areas, and opening more businesses in those areas without project support. So that's what we call the crowding in. It's not even like for like crowding in. So when some businesses started in a remotest area where there was few businesses, or where there is no businesses, then other peer businesses and different business input suppliers or other businesses could enter into the markets, and we are observing that. Next slide, please. So another factor that encourage crowding in a tin market is access to finance. So basically, we work with banks, MFIs to facilitate loans for businesses such that they can expand their business in those areas. And even when these financial institutions develop appropriate financial products, other financial institutions could copy that product and again crowd in supplying those kind of loans for businesses to for those businesses to have access to these financial services. I think next is Sven.
Hello everybody, Sven from Bolivia speaking. As mentioned in the last webinar, tin markets in Bolivia have certain features, such as with only few formal and well-established SMEs and other important stakeholders such as universities, farmer associations, etc. Exist. Yeah? Even worse, these few often weak stakeholders in Bolivia often maintain weak organizational ties between them. Such circumstances makes it really challenging for a crowding in strategy. But there are things one can do. Here I would like to show you a concrete example about how we tackle the diary sector and how we try to promote a technical assistance scheme or technical assistance business model in markets for smallholder farmers. Please don't be scared. It's not too complicated. I just would like to highlight some of the points in this slide, and you can have a look, a detailed look later on this slide. In this business model, what you can see is that we bring together a bunch of organizations that have an interest in providing some kind of technical assistance to smallholder dairy farmers in thin markets in the Altiplano of Bolivia. There is the local university. You can see it in the yellow box. The university has an interest in providing some kind of technical assistance to smallholder dairy farmers, giving some helpful information and technical advice, for instance, by setting up a soil laboratory or demonstration plots. Left to the university, you can see financial institutions. These might be interested to expand their business to the rural area and might therefore co-finance such a soil laboratory or demonstration plots. The university then helps the financial institutions to get some useful information on potential clients for loans, insurances, etc. Another very important actor in this scheme are agriculture inputs and technology providers. You can see them on the bottom left. They can provide embedded services, for example, to the farmers when selling the inputs, and they even can get motivated to sell better inputs than they normally do. Here, the success factor is showing these providers what benefits can bring customer loyalty. You can see it on one of the lines over there. It might really sound strange, but they often don't know about such basic issues as customer loyalty. Here I would like to mention quickly some other of these stakeholders which you have seen in the slide before. There are, of course, the municipal governments and the governorate. They have a genuine interest in getting such services to farmers. Therefore, they might even finance a big deal of these services or at least subsidize them. Then the financial institutions and the municipality could hire radio stations to disseminate important agriculture information to the farmers. And last but not least, you might strengthen agriculture service providers themselves, as they often sell poor and little diversified services to farmers. You see, in thin markets environments, you have to bring together more stakeholders than in a thick market system, because no actor is able to fulfill the task or realize the business on its own. And finally, it is worth mentioning that each of the boxes you have seen actually represent markets on their own. And we work in all of these markets in order to make to work this business model I've showed you.
Thanks very much. I'm hoping that everyone gets, there we go. And thanks for those really great examples there from the different programs. I think we're seeing the value of adoption and replication in the water transport sector in the DRC, but also other ways of looking at other systems, other supporting systems. So the technical assistance system here, the finance ecosystem. And also from that, I can see you're stressing the linkages. We're seeing not just the other many more actors that have to be brought together as individual actors can't fulfill things themselves, but we're seeing new actors, universities, local associations. And I think that does a great job actually of leading us onto this next question. So for our presenters, I think it's Netsaalem first. What are your strategies for working with other market actors? And would you say working with other market actors is more important in less dysfunctional markets? So it's more important in thin markets than in less dysfunctional markets? I'll pass over to Netsaalem first of all.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, I would say it's more important working with other market actors, the likes of the regulators or local authorities in dysfunctioning market than those developed market, because and in this kind of market, always there is the bureaucracy is very high. Getting business registration is so hard, and business are mostly disappointed in operating or investing in this kind of area. So it's important to work with the local authorities to improve the leveling ground for businesses to be more attracted in that kind of area. So in Prime, we have been providing technical assistance to regulators to improve the enabling environment. We're working with regulators like the National Bank of Ethiopia, for example, to improve or to change their directives to allow the mobile banking to start in pastoralist areas. So we have achieved that by working or providing continuous technical assistance for the national banks and for other actors who provide the technology in those areas. We also organize different investment forums for people to have discussion and on how to improve the working environment on developing rural economies. We organize in country and outside country exposure visit to show those other market actors to learn how other countries or how other areas are working to improve the enabling environment for businesses to operate. So we also share a different experience through sharing successes or organizing trainings and how it works, like this facilitative approach is bringing change in those areas such that they can ease the regulation or they can change their procedures in more allowing more business to flourish in a thin market.
So it is more important to work with other market actors in thin markets. I have named it partners help to reduce costs of transport and increase competitiveness. As we have heard from the other programs, finance is always an issue, and it is for us as well. The traders and transporters are dependent on cash flow to buy new goods, sell them off, and buy again. By increasing cash flow, the number of rotations can increase. So basically, the business is running faster. In DRC, we see fragmented retail markets, so this increases selling time, and this is actually difficult for the traders and transporters. However, we also have agro-industries who are interested to source locally. However, here the traders need to be competitive, particularly with imports also, which are very competitively priced. Still, we are working now with agro-industries to source locally, and this increases cash flow and enables traders to source more products from Equator province where I work. Another actor with whom we work is the River Transport Alliance, which represents transporters' interests. Since 2014, they are engaging in tax advocacy activities, and ÉLAN RDC has provided some support to capacity building and encouraging public-private dialogue. So recently, the Alliance has been able to implement reduction of rent-seeking activities, and we are measuring it, and we think that this could yield up to $500,000 per year, which are then available to buy more agricultural goods. Also, they are interested to become what we call focal point for the transporters, so those that the traders will call if they need a boat, and they will do this as a commercial leg, and this will also help to become more competitive.
Thank you, Philipp. For us here in Bolivia, engaging different levels of government and civil society is very important, and sometimes the only way to scale up things in thin markets. However, the way you approach these actors is different when using the MSD approach. In more traditional project approaches, you ask the public partner, for instance, how can we help directly your target group to get better? Typical question, isn't it? Following the MSD approach, however, you rather ask, how can I help you, the public sector, to design and implement a better project for your target group. That way, the public sector becomes or stays the protagonist of your intervention. And it's not that you as a project being in the lead of implementing the intervention, which is, I think, a very important lesson to learn. Here's a short example on that. Very often, public sector development projects are designed without applying any sustainability criteria. On the contrary, very often it is all about giving for free certain goods, such as seeds or fertilizers, or providing certain services, such as agriculture extension services. As an MSD project, you cannot participate in such kind of project, or you shouldn't, as you will do more harm than good. But you can help the government or the public institution in designing better projects. And in these projects, you can build in interventions that you have found are necessary for resolving certain identified bottlenecks. For instance, if a major bottleneck is that small farmers have no agriculture insurance, then you might engage with the national authority responsible for that issue in order to design together a suitable product for the smallholder farmers. But it's not you who should design the product. It should be the authority which is responsible for this kind of products. Besides that, in Bolivia, most municipal governments spend only around 50% of their annual budget for different reasons. That opens for us certain opportunities for public investment, such as in productive infrastructure, for example, building a dam for irrigation. And this investment then can complement or lay the groundwork for private investments and also for important and well-designed subsidies. This approach, however, normally takes more time, as local governments have to first be convinced about the idea, and then they have to budget these new expenditures for the next year. We also often engage with small producers, associations or business associations, even if they are weak, because these associations are sometimes the only stakeholders that can reach a certain economy of scale. What do I mean with that? We work, for instance, with quite weak associations of cheese-producing smallholder farmers. One of the interventions is to get them to buy agriculture inputs, such as fertilizer or fodder, together in order to take advantage of low prices and transaction costs, such as transport costs. On the other side, we encourage them to sell together their products on the market, for instance, in order to get better prices per volume or per weight. Thank you. Next.
Thanks very much. Some really great examples there. I think what I really liked from those that we see these really great examples of both working with the government, local government, and also from working with civil society and other membership organizations. I think it was put quite well by Philippe that in these markets it is all the more important to work with a variety of actors, which clearly are coming out of this very clear implications in political economy, which we'll talk about later, for the time that we might expect results. And there's some key lessons coming through, for instance, from Sven about ways to use government budget spending. The last question that I want to ask to our speakers is crowding in markets mission impossible? And as well, from these two webinars we've had so far, what are your key lessons and what are the outstanding questions? So I'll pass it over to Philippe first of all.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Is it mission impossible? Well, in July 2015, I actually asked my colleagues, how can we work in thin and distant markets? I'm just presenting you what some of the answers were, and I hope that it makes sense for you. The first one that I have here is we must make sure that crowding in can happen. So that means already before we engage in a project, think it through to the end. What is the significance of a sector? Who are the actors who could follow our interventions? And if we are very sure, or if we are confident from the beginning that there is a chance of crowding in, then maybe we have certain security that it's not mission impossible. That links to actually the prior to last answer that I got. We need to find the strongest private sector partners who are interested in a more inclusive economy, who are interested in a more inclusive business also, and see a business opportunity for them. Because this is a strong incentive towards sustainability of interventions and towards development that helps crowding in. But please, third one, we need to be aware of the capacities of the businesses with which we work. So stay realistic. We need also to think about the value for money. So ÉLAN RDC, as I said, it works in 6 provinces, and we have a number of projects. So we also need to see where do we really have an impact? What does it cost us? Linked to this, nobody hopes it, but a clear exit strategy is also required, or let's not name it exit strategy, but name it review process and refine process to make sure that the project stays online with the opportunities and uses the opportunities. So no, it's not mission impossible, but how is it possible? What have we learned so far? Know your area. So for us, it's very limited demand. It's high costs of transport and it's high risk. It's limited geographical extension. So these ports are islands. There is only the river. There are no roads between them. Know the key issues. Trust, information, cooperation in our case. That's something take away from the first workshop. Raise awareness. Show opportunities to potential partners. I mentioned the agro-industries example. Work with innovative forms of bringing across your message. Film we used radios to distribute the message in tax advocacy. Be patient and invest more than in thick markets. There are less actors. It is more difficult. So adapt your model. Be present more than you would be in thick markets, probably. And then last one, maybe there is sometimes something that is an advantage in thin markets, so the particularity of a situation, I named it. And I come back to Basankuzu. So it's so isolated that the traders who are active over there consider it as their kind of personal property, and they are actually engaged in growing this market. So they set up boutiques near warehouses. They started to communicate more than before with farmers to make sure that farmers produce more. And they also establish price transparency. So they work in a fair manner with the farmers now in order to make their market work better. Thanks, and to Netsaalem.
Thank you. As the speakers put also, I would say from practical experience, it's possible, but it's not an easy job, because these are the most hardest places to operate, and also businesses to function as a business, given all those contexts. So I would say it's possible if we development practitioners facilitate the market system change rather than involving or playing an actor role. If the access to finance improved for businesses, that will make easy the crowding in. Also, if the enabling environment, like including infrastructures, if there is road, if there is a mobile network, or if there are other market information, crowding in would be easy. And also, business develop like natural. When people's income increase, there will be high demand for product and services, so that businesses will see that opportunity and crowd in those areas. So this is a natural way of how businesses grow. So if this such criteria or such conditions are fulfilled, it will be possible to facilitate crowding in a thin market. There are also certain conditions which makes the crowding in hard in a thin market, like if the market is distorted by a free handout. So mostly these remote areas or thin markets are prone to the dependency. There are more aid, more humanitarian activities. So it's hard for businesses to enter in those areas when there is their product is parallelly handed out for free in those areas. So when there is also no feasible or tangible demand for the product and service, it's also hard to facilitate thin market, crowding in a thin market. And where there is conflict or instability, or when there is perceived risk to invest in those areas, it will be hard to facilitate crowding in those areas. Otherwise, generally, from the experience that we have in Prime, it's possible to facilitate a crowding in thin market if we get our approach right, and if we work with businesses, if we are not affiliated to some businesses and leave others, and if we make things competitive to when we make our offers, that will make more businesses interested in those areas and to seek opportunities so that they can expand in such thin markets.
As we have seen, crowding in thin market system is quite a challenge as well for us, because one has to coordinate with a lot of big stakeholders at the same time. That means actually that your staff has to have different skills than it would have in a traditional project, because your staff has to facilitate, has to network, coordinate, incentivize, etc., instead of doing things themselves. Besides, your project organizational structure must respond to the challenge. For instance, it makes no sense to have your team centralized in one place. On the contrary, you should have a decentralized team and work with local co-facilitators. Co-facilitators can be other non-profit organizations, can be public entities, or even sometimes it can be companies that would do the coordination and facilitation for you in a specific region or for a specific value chain. It is important that they have the capacity to do so and that they are present in the region. There's another very important issue, as the actors in thin market systems are often weak, it may become necessary first to improve their institutional capacity prior to starting doing the things you want to do together with them. In other words, crowding in might become unviable if you are not able to strengthen first your partners. That approach, of course, can take a lot of time, as institutional capacity building is a long-term issue. Therefore, what we do very often is that we design interventions together with a potential partner, and then we start working with the partner, but at the same time we start doing some institutional capacity building for the partner, so he gets better and better in doing what he'd like to do together with him.
Thanks very much. It's really inspiring hearing all that. So I feel that it is possible based on what we've heard. I think we've seen some very powerful examples of where crowding in is possible. But there's a lot of nuance that's been thrown in around that. The importance of involving multiple more organizations, not just in the private sector, of other linkages, looking at, of course, the supporting functions. All these are really being fleshed out. Plus, of course, being realistic is one of the big messages there about where work might start, perhaps rather than where it finishes. And from the end, from Sven, about the team skills that are involved and the decentralization. I think it's very important to think about the program capacity. So thanks very much. I think we have about another 10 or so minutes for some questions. So if you could start sending them in. I know we've already had a couple of questions. I'm looking, there's one from Roman and one from Richard, that I think are the specific presentation. So we're going to try and get them to answer you perhaps through text here. But if you could come into the Q&A session area on the right-hand side and send your question in there. Just to get you guys thinking, or to start this off, we've had one question in, which I'm now just sharing in the chat area, which comes from City Ishem, who's very interested in ideas of how to tackle issues in the political economy that present obstacles to the market changes that programs aim to achieve, monopolies, corruption. I know City in the first webinar was asking about monopolies, so I think there's two perhaps questions here. One is about how are programs understanding political economy issues, addressing those, and one perhaps a bit more specific to working alongside monopolies. Perhaps I could pass first of all to Philipp on that question, but I know Sven has something else to add as well. Philipp?
Yeah, thank you. Well, asking about monopolies, I'm not sure if I can give a really concise answer, but in my last slide I actually mentioned that thin markets have particularities, and I talked about the the traders in Bahiru who really care for their personal market, or what they consider their personal market, and this is pretty encouraging, and this would not work like this in thicker markets. Of course, there's also risk related to it, which is that there is less resilience. So if things do not develop in the right way, then it's much more difficult to go out and back and find another direction. I wanted to mention something else here in this context, which is more on the political economy side of it. So we are interested in fuel taxation, and here, of course, there are interests of different actors who benefit from fuel taxation, who are exposed to fuel taxation. So before we engage in a market, we do in-depth background analysis to make sure that we know the situation, and that as good as possible we have an idea about the actors we are working with. Hope that helps a bit.
Maybe I add some stuff, Ashley? Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have here in Bolivia quite interesting lesson learned. What I mean is that a program of a certain magnitude, as our programs are, we should work on all levels, not only on the local level or on a government level, but we should as well always have a foot working with the central government. And here, for example, I have a nice example here in Bolivia. What happened in 2012, the government of Bolivia decided to set up a special fund in order to support the dairy sector, but as well the small and medium dairy companies, in order to get a better balance against a big monopoly which we have here in Bolivia in the dairy sector. So they set up this big fund, and we helped the government to set up this fund and to run it, and we are still into that and helping with certain issues. And I think that's one of the few ways you can actually be part of a national strategy to deal with such kind of problems. That's from my side.
Thanks. I don't know if Netsaalem, you'd like to add anything. I mean, Richard Tinsley has asked as well, particularly if there's any views on working with parastatal monopolies. If anyone has anything more to add there, or Netsaalem, that's something you have something to add here? Okay. Well, look, for the other speakers, if you can see if you have some views about parastatal monopolies, please bring them back in the next question. But with the next question that has come in, I want to share around, I'm just putting in your chat area now, is from One Love's Sansola in SMB in Zimbabwe, who asks, what is your take on multi-stakeholder platforms for the private sector in thin markets? What are the best strategies to fund expansion in fragile markets? Sven, is that something you could answer?
Yeah, maybe I can say something about the first question. What is your take on multi-stakeholder platforms for the private sector in markets? We have done that quite for a long time, and there are some challenges you have to tackle with. First of all, these multi-stakeholder platforms very often are dominated by one or another party. Let's say here in thin market areas where they have a lot of farmers, for example, these kind of few enterprises actually, when these platforms can be quite dominated by farmers and farmer associations, and you should find a way to avoid it. Yeah? So this multi-stakeholder platform, even in thin markets, should have quite a balance between private sector companies, maybe you involve universities, public entities, and the farm associations, etc. That's a big issue. The second issue is it's very difficult to get them sustainable because they have to have a structure where they can actually have income or get somebody has to finance them, and this is always in thin markets a very difficult issue. So you have to find some mechanisms that they are able to finance the platform, so they be kept alive. You know? That is what I would like to contribute.
Thanks so much. Is anything from anyone to add on that? Okay. Lorenz, I don't know if you can hear me. I've sent in a question because I'm wondering if Netsaalem his line may have gone. But we have a couple more questions, and there's one from Lorenz, and then there's one I think from Robert Smith. So one from Margaret. I'm just going to share this question around to all the participants. And so, Lorenz, if you can add anything from the side of Prime to this question that's now in the chat area, that would be great, because I know Netsaalem was talking about the costs. But also, if Philippe and Sven could look at this question I've just shared around now. So Margaret Mesvai, and it's very good to see here, asks, how is the risk that is discouraging private sector actors from operating in thin markets calculated to indicate the size of grants offered to incentive market entry expansion? And how do you ensure no market distortion by subsidizing profits with grants unrelated to risk? So interesting question there about market distortion. Any takers on that question?
So I can open it. I don't know if I have a complete answer. How is the risk calculated? I can only tell you what we do. Access to finance is one of the pillars of ÉLAN RDC interventions, because as we have learned, money is always an issue. What we do is working with commercial banks and accepting that sometimes, well, the interest rates are pretty high, but the banks are also very, very cautious to work with private sector actors in new areas. So our main intervention is with the banks to provide background information, to provide market information to reduce risks for banks, and then actually they do the assessment what the client needs and what the risk for the bank is. And this is essential for us to make sure that it can become viable in the long term. Thank you.
Sven, anything to add to that?
Yes, I can say something. I think there is, in order to avoid distortion by subsidizing companies, there are some ground rules you should follow. For example, what we do when we have a company which like to have some incentive, some help from our side. Firstly, we have a look at if the company would do the thing without us. Then they might not be suitable to help them, at least not with cash or with other money. So the company should actually be taking a big risk to take a big risk to go into a new market or to launch a new product, and then we can assist the company in some way. There's, for example, a company here in Bolivia which sells organic fertilizer and other agriculture inputs, and they asked for help to expand to a certain area in Bolivia, and we told them that, you see, to expand there, it's your usual core business. There is no need for us to help you. But if you would like to expand to an area which is really tough ground area and a thin market actually, then we might assist you and help you because that would be actually great to do that. And that's how we decided to to help a little bit this company to expand to an area which they had not planned in the first place. Yeah, thanks.
Lawrence, was there anything that you wanted to add into that question on Netsalem's behalf there?
Yes, hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm jumping in here for Netsaalem as it seems that internet connection went out. I just wanted to add what we do on Prime, or what we have done. We have, for the small business expansion grants that Netsaalem mentioned, and also for the bigger Innovation Investment Fund cost-shared grant, we actually send out a tender, an opportunity for businesses to apply. And what we did, we said we're willing to cost share up to 50%, but because it's a competitive process, the lower the cost share that the private sector business is expecting from us, the more likely they're going to win. So in actuality, the businesses are they're competing for the grant, so they are actually setting the appropriate percentage that they need in order to, for example, expand into a new area, open up a new retail location. So in actuality, we don't provide 50% cost share. It's more around 30% mark, while the private sector partner is providing 70%. Now that's an average, and there's obviously some variances that for the different businesses. And another thing that we do is that if we do for some of the subsidies for trade fairs, for example, if we have a second trade fair in the same geographic regions, we reduce any type of subsidy that we have in a subsequent year, and then, for example, if we do it a third time or fourth time, that subsidy will then disappear completely. So that's how we approach that.
Thanks very much. So the last question, I sent this around. If our speakers, and we're including you, Lorenz, and I could have a look at that, because it's just from the length of it could be confusing. So Robert Smith from Oxford Policy Management, he says, to achieve crowding in, others need to see the market as interesting, but surely this is unlikely, because some of the most important factors that contribute to the thin market are unlikely to be the ones that can be changed, namely low population density, lack of cash-based economy, the general lack of economic activity, and possibly large distances to consumer markets. So effectively, the market was saturated but thin before the change, and saturated and possibly still thin afterwards. And this is the rest of this text afterwards. Even replication in other geographic regions may not be achievable because of wholesale differences in the reasons for the thin market in the two regions. Would the participants agree with these generic statements? So I don't know if anyone wants to take that. I think Robert perhaps comes from a slightly glass is half empty perspective, but it comes back to some of the definitional discussions we were having in the first webinar, thinking about nascent markets versus thin markets. Would anyone like to answer to that one?
Actually, do you mean the last long question, or another question?
Yes, the last long question.
I partly agree with the statement, but there are some things you should see might be different. What do I mean? For example, thin markets, as you mentioned in the question, talk about a low population density. But it's not always stays like this. There are a lot of migration going on, migration to the rural area, to medium-sized cities or to big cities, and there are actually some opportunities. You can take advantage of this migration flows, I would like to say. And if you get a real, let's say, a tipping point in migration to medium cities, where the young people and even older people still have a foot in the rural area, then you actually can get some kind of economy of scale and new kinds of businesses you haven't thought about it in the first place. So when you say the market might still be saturated or keeps or still stays thin, that might not be when you introduce new products, new economic flows, new services, then you can actually change a thin market into, let's say, a thicker market. No, I believe that, and we have seen some evidence here that this is really possible. I hope I explained myself.
Thanks very much. We're at about 3 o'clock, so I wanted to know, do the other speakers want to add something very quickly to this, or should we close it there? Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry, Ashley. Just maybe to support Sven a little bit. So we agree that thin markets are, of course, very difficult, but it's also these markets that have maybe the highest need to see some improvement. Some factors cannot be changed. What it is for us is that there are inefficiencies. So this we can improve through, as Sven said, working with new actors, bringing in new services. So these markets can get better and can get thicker and can develop new perspectives. This is what is important to me. Thanks.
Hi, Ashley. Can I just add one last thought on that as well?
Please do.
Okay, so this is Lawrence again speaking for Netsaalem. In the first webinar, my colleague Yeton was talking about how we look at thin markets versus nascent markets, and this maybe fits into that question a little bit, because what we look at with the markets we're working in Ethiopia and the pastoral areas, we see them as nascent markets. We see that there's potential there, but there are systemic inefficiencies. They are thin markets, but there's no lack of demand and supply. So what we want to do is make sure that, for example, just as an example, the live livestock value chain is all the way from the producer all the way to the market in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, Yemen, maybe less so now with the conflict there. But the whole system there works. And with in Ethiopia, with the highland regions being much more further developed in terms of the market system than the lowlands, one of the things that we do is we try to get we try to link these businesses or get businesses from the highland areas into the pastoral areas of Ethiopia. So that's our general approach there, and we've seen that approach has worked. So I don't know if that answered the questions at all. I think I touched on a couple of the points. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks so much for the great answers. And I love a question that lets me link back to the first webinar as well. So thanks very much. So with that, we'll draw a line here. I know we've gone a little over time. Thanks to all of you for attending and all those great questions that have kept us a bit longer because we wanted to address them. There was a couple individual ones which we'll make sure they get followed up on. A big thanks to the SEEP network for helping us organize this. Thanks very much. And a massive thanks to our speakers. We know you guys are volunteers and you put a lot of time into this, a lot of thought. So we're really grateful for you putting yourselves out. We're sending around some things now. There's a survey we're sending around, which I know they're quite annoying things to do, but we really do use them. So great if you could fill that in. 2 surveys should come up because it's WebEx. One is a WebEx technical survey. One is the Beam one. Please just, the Beam one is the one that we need. We're also sending around some other links. You may have, one is to the webinar from the original webinar. The other resources are resources that we shared in the first webinar that were recommended by the programs. This online discussion where we are discussing definitions. So please have a look at those if you haven't already. That leaves me nothing else to say apart from a big thanks to all of you, and I hope you have a really great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much
for listening.
Thank you from my side. Goodbye. Have a good day.
Thank you from the Mercy Corps Prime project. Thanks for listening in. Bye-bye.